everyone. We have quorum. We've got a few last-minute apologies who have appointed me as their proxy, so we're at 27. Welcome and thank you for making the time today to the first special general meeting of LawFi DAO. I just want to do a check for everyone online. Can you hear me clearly? Thumbs up, nods, great. All right, well, first of all, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands upon which we all meet. Today, I and those joining us in person are here from Wurundjeri land, and we'd like to extend our respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'd also like to extend our thanks to ZeroCap for kindly sharing their office space with us to make sure that all the IT goes as smoothly as possible and that we have a space to actually meet in person for those of us that were able to do so. I really would like to thank ZeroCap for all their support to date. It's not just in the office space, but the whole team have been ready and willing to provide assistance and are closely following our progress to determine how best a company can be a member and provide support that way. I'd also like to acknowledge the values and beliefs of our DAO, which is respect, reciprocity, integrity and kindness, while doing things differently and appreciating that time is our most precious resource. You would have received the notice of meeting in the agenda in mid-September. We're required to give 21 days notice of the resolutions proposed to be passed and that need to be passed by special resolution. This meeting is being recorded today. And if you have any issue with being seen or heard or your words written in the chat being available subsequent to this meeting, please send an email to jp@lawfidao.com and we can make sure that the recording is edited so that your privacy and your concerns are respected. There will also be separate written minutes of this meeting formalised and signed on behalf of the organisation. So again, to the extent that you have concerns with what might be put in the minutes, please let me know. So declare the meeting officially open now that we have quorum. We have a few observers in the room as well, so thank you for making the time to observe. I'll get into the apologies. There are 4 or 5 people that had meetings go over or that the timing was inconvenient for them. And the 3 proxies received are from Josh, who is the representative for Social Impact Group, Andrew Dardell and Roy from Pella Technology. The first proposed special resolution, if I can bring up the agenda. Bear with me while I share screen, please. Okay, can everybody see that? Great. So the first proposed resolution is to accept the proposed version 1.0 of the white paper. Now, version 0.01 was circulated about 6 weeks ago. There has been limited written feedback submitted to me on the white paper, and really 2 non-members who are not named, but their issues have been logged in section 7 of the revised white paper that was circulated to all members earlier today. The nature of that feedback was that the pay-to-rely model was not described clearly enough in the white paper and therefore should have some diagrams and further explanation to support what that pay-to-rely model is. And myself, my edits throughout are really to make the whole white paper more articulate, clarify some of the key legal rules both from the Victorian law and the federal law that we're trying to navigate and get early engagement guidance on from the other resolution that we're proposing today to register with the Consumer Affairs Victoria LawFi DAO as an incorporated association, and whether we'll meet the not-for-profit tests or whether there's any impermissible pecuniary benefits to the association or to members. Those are the key legal things that we're seeking clarity on by taking the LawFi DAO through this particular process. So I'll just take off the agenda screen for the moment and now start to share the white paper. Stop share. Okay, here we go. Can everybody see that Word document? Okay. I'll put track changes on. All right. And just to scroll down to item 7, the other piece of non-member feedback was that the description of money tokens, it sort of felt like the money token was a stable coin. That was not the intention. So the whole money token section has been revised to clarify. And as I do a page by page, we will, any further feedback can be provided. Now, because all of the members have not had at least 21 days, or probably even 24 hours to properly consider the nature of these track changes, even though the special resolution, the voting options are yes, no, or abstain, it is perfectly reasonable if you feel that you haven't had enough time to go through proposed V1 and that you wish to cast an abstain vote rather than a yes or a no. We can convene a further special general meeting if it's considered by the majority to be more appropriate to have more time to consider what this white paper should say to accompany an application for registration for incorporation as an incorporated association. So to begin with, and I might just say before I get into this, please raise your hand using the function in Zoom so that I can direct the conversation to you if you have feedback. It's a little difficult for me to see the chat window. Great. Oh, Samantha, I'll just check. Are you getting sound now?
Yes, I am. I logged out and logged in on a desktop.
All right, fantastic. Great. Well, I can see the chat function now. So either send comments through that way or raise your hand. Okay, so in terms of the first proposed edit, it is to be more specific with the purpose of the DAO. Now, in defining what the pay to rely protocol is intended to be, I've realized that all of these purposes are, they could capture broadly our design and development, implementation and maintenance of the pay to rely protocol. But for the avoidance of doubt, I think that the purposes of our rules and that are also repeated in the white paper should be more specific to say that one of our purposes is to design, develop, implement and maintain a protocol with a decentralised model of governance. And that is exactly how we'll educate the public, policymakers, regulators and the judiciary to promote behaviours that contribute to all the items under subparagraph B, and to do our experiments, observe of them and reflect on how the legal industry can do all of the items in subparagraph C better. Now, you haven't provided, in the notice of meeting provided today, that is not a proposed change to the rules. But if, say, you issue an abstain vote because you think it also is critical that we revise the purposes as reflected in the rules of our DAO, then that is the proposal that you will see coming following this meeting, to be very articulate as that being a core purpose. So in specifying that at the outset of the purposes, it also begs some definition about what the pay-to-eye protocol is, which also requires a definition of the products. So the pay-to-eye protocol is something that we need to decide on how basic or how complex it should be, at least in our version 1. And we need to be very conscious that even if we are allowed to become an incorporated association by Consumer Affairs Victoria, there continues to be legal risk if an incorporated association is seen to be doing things that are then for the profit of its association or for its members that fall foul of what the legislation provides. So it's not like we get in and we've got free rein. It's something that we always need to be conscious of. So I have got a slide deck prepared, which I will go to shortly, to explain what the basic protocol can look like compared to the one that has all the bells and whistles. To opt for the one with all the bells and whistles would mean that we've got the most opportunity to clarify a number of areas, grey areas in legal and tax rules through the benefit of early engagement with all of the relevant regulators, at least in Australia, and then that could be replicated all around the world. But we as members always have to be mindful of the risk that we're all bearing. So at a high level, it means one or more contracts deployed on the Ethereum blockchain or similar to facilitate the provision of the pay-to-rely products by various providers, particularly those in the legal profession, as set out and updated from time to time in this white paper. So in this sense, we're trying to set the white paper up as similar to bylaws of a not-for-profit or an existing type of association. And the pay-to-rely products means information or services provided using the pay-to-rely protocol by persons that may or may not require qualifications and registrations before being able to provide such information or services to third parties. And that's just to capture those that in the legal industry that are regulated and required to be registered, including accountants, and non-regulated professionals might also seek to use this protocol to provide various things.
Samantha put some comments in the chat.
Oh, thank you. So just to address a comment from member Samantha, I think if it is designed to be inclusive, any fees need to be as minimal as they can be, especially for other countries, given the currency differences. Thank you, Samantha. The resolutions proposed today and the updates to the rules and the white paper are not proposing any changes to the current joining fee, which is set at US $130 per member, and with some ability to waive that membership fee if a member requests a waiver because of their financial difficulties. So there's no proposal to change that at this stage. Okay, great, acknowledged. Thank you, Samantha. So the changes that you see on this page are really just edits to be more clear about how the white papers and the versioning will be communicated, non-substantive changes from my point of view. But then we get down to the establishment section. So the revisions here are intended to say and to explain the reason for opting for an unincorporated not-for-profit association structure first. And that is because, at least from my perspective, this is the closest thing we can get to a native or wild DAO, because it doesn't require any registration with any regulatory body such as Consumer Affairs Victoria or ASIC. This unincorporated association structure is the one that can exist, and you don't need to collect member details. You can preserve their privacy that way. You don't have regulatory reports that need to be filed. You may need tax registrations still and tax filings, but it's from the corporate law perspective that we're trying to be in a structure that allows most sort of flexibility in a non-registration and a non-collection of member details. So the cooperatives, the limited partnerships and the trusts, in some way or another, they all require registration for their recognition. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't further consider the appropriateness of those structures if our composition of members would feel more comfortable with those as starting structures for LawFi DAO. But this just explains really my decision-making in the initial formation of the association. So again, we're attempting to be legally compliant and to keep the world informed along the way of designing, developing, implementing and maintaining the pay-to-rely protocol and a decentralised model of governance while achieving the rest of our purposes in our rules. Hopefully, this will reveal the policy gaps in existing law and international legal frameworks and to provide a well-informed basis for how the law can change. From my experience in talking about LawFi DAO to the Australian Law Reform Commission, the UK Law Commission, the Australian Board of Tax, they're already appreciating the real life example that is more familiar to regulators than those native and wild DAOs. So early feedback is that it has been helpful. The further clarifications here are to clarify the legal risk. So the intention to apply for registration as an incorporated association with Consumer Affairs Victoria, once proposed version 1 of the white paper is approved by special resolution, is intended to test the pecuniary benefits exemptions that you see me highlighting down here below. So I've put them in this paper so that it is transparent for everybody. And that once the process for registration is complete or near complete with Consumer Affairs and alongside early engagement with our federal regulator in Australia, ASIC, then we may be able to test how our association stacks up in other states and territories in Australia, as well as the foreign laws. But we at least have a base vehicle registered in one of the jurisdictions in Australia, which provides our base membership and ability to have community consensus, at least amongst our base membership. So the exemptions under Victorian law that specify an association is not taken to secure a pecuniary profit for its members or to be formed or carried on for the purposes of securing a pecuniary profit merely because one of the following applies. So the association itself can make a pecuniary profit unless that profit or any part of it is divided among or received by its members or some of them. Now, as you know, the membership token is proposed to be non-transferable. Therefore, the assumption is that no value accrues to it. You may receive indirect value because of your reputation and the credentials that are added to your non-fungible membership token. It may enhance your value as a person to provide services to other DAOs or other entities. So the money token is the thing that is separate, is able to be transferable, and which is intended to fluctuate up and down as sort of an indication of value of how much public good and utility is coming from use of the pay-to-rely protocol, as well as the network of members involved with LawFi DAO. Now, a member doesn't necessarily hold money tokens and vice versa. So because it is not conditional to be a member to be able to contribute money to LawFi DAO or tokens, I am hoping, and it's my position, that shouldn't be in any gain that's possible by a person holding a money token, and if that person is a member, that should not be construed as pecuniary profit that is divided amongst or received by its members or some of them. This is an example of a point which we want to clarify with Consumer Affairs Victoria and at the same time with ASIC. the money token raises more concerns with the Corporations Act, which is supervised by ASIC, as to whether that is a managed investment scheme. Because if we are issuing the money token to raise capital for pooling, really to develop the protocol, and that financial benefits could accrue to the money token holders because of an increase in the value of the money token, taking a broad reading of the managed investment scheme definition, that could mean that that particular scheme requires a financial services license if the money token is offered to the public, including with retail investors. But it begs the question, if it is separate to the membership token, is it something that will make the whole association fall foul of the permissible pecuniary profits and benefits? I'll pause here to say there's a lot of loaded and heavy concepts throughout this white paper, so it is more than okay to issue an abstain vote if you each wish to obtain separate legal advice.
Can I ask a quick question at this point?
Yes, please go ahead.
Is that point that you're talking about, how ASICS is looking at, is it like you're looking at it as a currency coin effectively for raising funds to establish the LawFi DAO itself? Is it a little bit like the Securities Commission in New York that's in battle with Library, the LRBY coin, that stated that if there was even one person who held the coin as a speculative coin, even though it was utterly used as a currency within its system, that they would regard it as a security. Is it along those lines that they're saying that no matter how minimal the fact that it might become something akin to a security, therefore it falls under a security law and will require the presence of all the other ASICS requirements that you need for anything to do with a security under Australian law? Is it along those lines that they're saying it?
Well, the US securities law enforcements have shown more aggression than what ASIC has been willing to entertain, but we don't know whether that mood will change now or in the near or medium to long-term future. So the approach of LawFi DAO will be to early engage and get as much clarity on our proposed LawFi DAO activities, our tokenomics, and what activities can be done, from a base of the LawFi DAO in a legally compliant way. And if we're getting negative feedback from Victorian, Consumer Affairs Victoria, or from ASIC, then that would have to be reported back to members, and all of that feedback would be collected before we deploy anything or issue any tokens.
Okay, but is that a little bit, again, going in early, is that a little bit like what happened to XRP when they went in voluntarily saying what they were doing, and then that gave them fuel to then attack them? Are you concerned about the way that may open up LawFi DAO and its members by being so transparent at the beginning? I mean, I'm just asking from a risk point.
No, they're great questions. I believe that XRP had already been on issue and circulated before Ripple considered that they were early engaged. So, we have no tokens issued and circulating on the market. At this stage, they're all proposals and for consideration of the members. There may be preliminary efforts to investigate the feasibility of the proposals, but that doesn't mean that we are carrying on the business of issuing and, controlling the circulation of any of our tokens yet, because at this stage it's early and preliminary and for which we're seeking guidance.
And you're feeling pretty good about it from the feedback you're getting with them?
I'm feeling that it's early and preliminary, and there are enough grey areas that I'm very concerned about the legal and the tax risks. But
that's what I'm worried about.
No, and that's why it's for every member to understand the risk that they're willing to take on and how much through this educative and exploratory exercise we want to do on behalf of the whole of the Web3 industry to benefit from these learnings.
Yeah, I think that's probably, I don't know about for other people, but for me, that's my key concern, is that being so visible and transparent at this early stage, I am therefore liable if they just become fickle and decide to attack something, like you're being really great, being upfront, being transparent, and all the rest of it, but it's really in a big, globally, it's under attack, pretty big time, the blockchain space, and the law around it, and how governments are looking at it, and certainly with the introduction of the CBCs, I'm just concerned from being very upfront about it being attacked more because of that, because they can.
It's a valid concern, and thank you for raising it. No, and so your options are to withdraw as a member, or you could have an abstain vote, or even a no vote at this general meeting. So please be aware of the options that are available to you.
Yep.
At this stage, I just want to quickly run through these permissible member benefits, and then I'm going to switch to the slide deck. Oh, and forgive me, Nathan's just pointing me to the comments in the chat from Miles, referring to the Queensland state law on incorporated associations. So Section 25, an incorporated association has, in the exercise of its affairs, all the powers of an individual. And an incorporated association may, for example, enter into contracts, acquire, hold, deal and dispose of property, make charges for services and facilities, do other things necessary or convenient to be done in carrying out its affairs. And it may also issue secured and unsecured notes, debentures, debenture stocks for the association. And the reference is given there. Miles, did you want to make any further comments in relation to that section reference? You're okay? All right. So the item B, members of the association are entitled under the Victorian law to divide assets among themselves on its dissolution. Now, whilst this is allowed, the rules of our association say that no, we can't do that, that any assets on our dissolution will be provided to a DAO or a charity of a similar purpose. I'm paraphrasing there. The practice, though, is if you withdraw your membership, we are providing refunds of the joining fee. So just on a practical basis, those are really the only assets of the association, in addition to the GoFundMe campaign funds that I raised and contributed at the outset of the DAO. For item C, it is okay for a member of the association to receive a payment of remuneration in good faith, or a benefit to which he or she should be entitled if he or she were not a member of the association. And that goes to the borderline, whether there is one, between a membership token and also a holding of a money token. And item D, the members of the association can compete for trophies or prizes in contests directly related to the purposes of the association and receive benefits through the enjoyment of facilities or services provided by the association for social, recreational, educational and other similar purposes. So at this point, I will pause and just mention, Greg, would you like to announce the surprise that's
Of course.
on offer?
Yeah, we have a poll out for everyone, including on the Zoom. So for the people in the room here in Melbourne, I will distribute those via a QR code at the end. For the people on Zoom, Joni, I'm happy for them to, I don't know if you have everyone's email address, you can either give to me today or tomorrow and I can send them out.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'll send an email to everybody getting their consent to share their email with you.
Yep.
And we can go that way.
Yep. Perfect.
But yay, and thank you to Greg for organising another POAP for marking this special occasion.
It's pretty much the best POAP I've ever seen.
I haven't even seen it yet, so.
Sorry, I don't do heavy conversations.
And then finally, the association makes payments to a member that is an incorporated association having the same or a similar purpose. So I will stop sharing, and now you will each have, hopefully, a visual of okay. Can you all see the slide deck now? Okay. So there are a number of options that we could go for. And if we feel that we're in a stage, I can ask for a show of hands, raised hands in the room, as well as the raised function hands using Zoom, or by saying your vote in the chat as to which pay to rely protocol you think is according with your risk appetite. So option 1 is the most basic. It is literally providing a protocol that allows a person to deploy their pay to rely product, which will likely be as an NFT with a linked document, and the pay to rely product engagement letter, which for lawyers, which would be the engagement letter and the costs agreement, which we're going through a process with the legal profession bodies to agree what that template needs to look like. That could be it. Option 2 includes the peer review function. And this is where, again, if Bedazzle is the initial provider, then 2 other law firms might say they want to peer review that particular advice that I've given through a pay to rely product. And let's say that both of them agree with me, then the percentage is split a third, in terms of what goes to the original provider to the peer reviewer. That percentage can change, and it probably will be contractually defined by each provider and what they're willing to share with the peer reviewers that come along. Maybe there's a minimum floor that we set. We could have just the basic pay to rely plus the insurance pool. The LawFi DAO as a platform is a confusing and a novel model. It is unsure whether there will be, when you have a one-to-many, so one lawyer providing advice that, you know, tens or hundreds or thousands of third parties are relying on, a $2 million liability limit just might not be enough. So the many will come seeking for another person to blame, and rightly or wrongly, LawFi DAO and its members and its officers may be brought into that claim. So part of the revenue stream could go to an insurance pool upon which there's a whole claims process put around it. Option 4 is just pay to rely with a revenue distribution scheme, which maintains and is aligned with not-for-profit purposes. So that revenue distribution goes to similar DAOs or just charities, to be super conservative. Alternatively, if we want to have the money tokens more as a debt instrument, that we're attracting finance to the DAO, and we want part of the revenue stream to pay for the returns for principal and interest to those financiers, that could be how the revenue distribution pool is used. Again, that likely wouldn't fall foul of the permissible pecuniary benefits, to the extent that a member was also a money token holder and had provided finance to the DAO. And you could have a combination. You could have both of a revenue distribution pool that does both of financing and grant making to the similar DAOs or charities. Finally, option 5 is the multifunction monolith. We could do everything. This is all the bells and whistles and represents a lot of what is going on in the spectrum of DAOs in the world of Web3 at the moment. This would allow us to give the most amount of education and experiments to policymakers, regulators, or all of those who are in the ambit of our purposes. There's, from options 6 through to the remainder, there's various combinations. So if you think that the revenue distribution causes the most amount of risk, perhaps you want the first 3 things. Or if you think insurance is its own bigger than Ben-Hur exercise to manage, and that there may be an insurance offering coming in the market, we're hopeful of that, but maybe LawFi DAO doesn't need to manage its own insurance. And then, you know, the final is that we cut out peer reviewing pool, because some people think that peer reviewers reduce the amount of legal risk involved. Others think that it increases it. So to remove it and maintain insurance and revenue distribution would be a more conservative. You can see that there's a spectrum of views that have come out. So the purpose of this slide deck is to illustrate, hopefully in the best visual terms that we can, the options available to you all. Okay, structuring options very quickly is, forgive me, Alana, did you want to offer anything?
Apologies, guys. I just dropped out, so I'm just rejoining you. So
No worries. Structuring options, the only items 1 through to 3 have been filled out in the slides, because items 4 through till 8 really are a feature of the legal steps required to have those entity types recognised and registered. So in 1A, for example, what we see is that the founders typically prepare their white paper and seek to engage the core contributors and capital contributors based on their white paper. So the DAO is reflected by the closest shape to a LawFi DAO splash that I could find. And core contributors sort of sit out here, no legal liability. It's this open entity and this open structure where they're contributing to a thing that is not necessarily recognised. There is still a wallet. There are tokens deployed, and the voting and the direction is governed by how many token holders vote on whatever is proposed. And typically we see an initial DEX offering. That's what IDO stands for. And that may be used to effectively raise capital, and a liquidity pool may be seeded subsequently. Thank you, Samantha. I'll get to your comment in just a moment. All these slides will be available just to the members subsequent to this, but because it is a draft work paper for our discussion purposes only, you will see the disclaimer at the back that it is not going to be shared for public consumption. It's not subject to the CCO license as normally our materials are, because it's just not ready and it's not in a state to be shared, copied or distributed, even in alternative form. Option 1B is another DAO first option with a fair launch and a liquidity pool strategy. This probably is what most reflects LawFi DAO at the moment. Our core contributors, though, we're within the DAO and framed within an unincorporated association structure, where if we get approval, we will incorporate our association. But in order to have global distribution and holding of our tokens, the typical method that a DAO would use is a DEX to distribute or to make available for 24/7 trading availability of, and it would be the money token that would be on the DEX, because with our membership token being non-transferable, that can't be transferred and is not subject to trading. Option 2 is what a lot of protocols have opted for, the development company and the DAO in existence. The trouble with this one, though, is that we still don't understand the separateness of the DAO to the DevCo, because there is a confusing sharing of obligations and responsibilities, despite often there being a services agreement. It doesn't reflect the substance of the responsibility being taken on by the employees or those engaged by the development co, relative to who's exercising the vote. There are some examples that go against that, though. And finally, a very popular structure has been the foundation and the DAO with the token generation event. Now, the token generation event is used to raise capital. So you can see by that stream there, that's usually where the significant injection of capital is. It's sort of the windfall event that is supposed to fund the foundation in perpetuity, because often there is not a revenue stream back to the foundation to fund the ongoing maintenance. Maybe some of the supply of tokens is held in the foundation for a further it would be token distribution at that later point in time if more capital is raised. Otherwise, debt capital would be considered, but it's it's unknown how principal and interest would be repaid if there's no revenue to that foundation. So 4 to 8 is legal steps driven and is not considered in this paper. Now I'll just pause to get to Samantha's comment about the peer review protocol. Might be a good idea, but if the group grows too big, peer review.
Just don't waste time on it, because people have got to leave at 5 and I've got to leave as well. So please just take it as a comment.
Oh, sure. Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, I'll stop sharing that slide deck now, and given the time, we won't have the opportunity to go through all of the track changes with the white paper, but can I get a quick indication with nods whether people feel comfortable to cast the vote on the first proposed resolution? Okay, yep, I'm getting a good indication. Well, I might, Nathan, ask you to help me in just taking a note down of all of the people who have how they cast their vote. I might change my instruction from before for record keeping purposes. If you want to cast a vote for each resolution, please specify in the chat. Because I think that will allow us to go back and have the correct record after the meeting to double check whether the resolution has been passed or not. Okay, thank you everyone. All right, so without further ado, I am now going to ask whether the special resolution to accept the proposed version 1 of the white paper is accepted, and you are able to vote yes, no, or abstain. So please put your vote in the chat now.
We might need to do.
I'll just
Oh,
note down.
Nathan
Yeah.
will make a note down for those of you in person. And it needs to pass by the special resolution, which is 3/4 of the eligible voting members. Which is 20, we need I think it's 25. Bear with us while we're just pausing to count the vote.
Johnny, just a technical idea, maybe to put the question in the chat, it would be easier than to go through the questions and through the log of the voting.
Yeah. Thank you. It's just a matter of whether I can get the chat on my screen, which I will try. Here we go. Okay, I think that it looks like there are enough abstains that it won't pass. So just double checking there. Yeah, no, so I think it's suffice to say, based on the level of abstains, that resolution is not passed. So the next resolution is now in the chat, to amend the rules to state that the association must have at least 5 members. Please cast your vote now as to yes, no, or abstain. And just as a matter of note, yes is in lieu of for, no is in lieu of against, and abstain is as the same per the proxy form for the general meeting. Okay, this one looks like it will pass. Yep, you're getting a record of everybody in person as well.
Yeah, I'll
You'll go.
I'll be
Yep.
back, yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay, so special resolution 3 is now in the chat. Do you accept the proposal to register with Consumer Affairs Victoria as an incorporated association? Yeah, that one, so we'll need to know the people in the room on this one.
Abstain until read number 1. I think it references back to number 1.
Mm.
Needs that extra time to.
Yeah,
I'm the same. Yep, same.
Yes.
as in yes to abstain or yes
Yes for consumer.
for it? Just to clarify, abstain, abstain, abstain?
Yep.
Yep. All right, so I think based on initial indications, but it's subject to confirmation, that item 3 is not passed. And finally, resolution 4 is now in the chat. The proposed resolution is to cease use of Jira and Confluence for task management and move to a complementary platform so membership fees can be used to fund activities of LawFi DAO and specifically to fund the cost of design and deployment of the LawFi DAO membership token. One of the proposals is Notion, but we don't need to vote on the specific complementary software today. Okay, this one looks like it will pass. Okay, so provisionally, but subject to confirmation when we circulate the results of this meeting, is that resolutions 1 and 3 are not passed, but that 2 and 4 are. Great. Now that is all the official business of the meeting today, because there was no agenda item for other general business. We will call the meeting officially closed at 4:55 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. But I will open back up unofficially to have a general discussion of members now. And you're still being recorded, so let me know subsequently if you have any issue with this, and we can edit out the recording. But welcome now a free-flowing discussion about today. We can stay on till 5:30, but understand that people do need to leave. And based on what you've heard today, and if you've had a chance to look through the track changes, the resolutions 1 and 3 not passing is absolutely fine. It's an indication of what the members are thinking, the risk appetite, the risks involved in a DAO and the decisions that it needs to make. So I want everybody to feel comfortable with the votes that they've cast today, and just thank you again for participating. So if I can direct discussion, actually raise your hand now, both virtually and in the room, and happy to facilitate a general discussion. Or we can knock off early. No worries, Patrick. All right.
Very well done. Thank you, Joni, and everyone who's attended.
Thank you, Electra. No worries.
We'll keep reading it and and keep thinking over it. Hey, see you next time.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy your Friday and your weekend, and see you at Community Call next Friday. Thank
See you
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.